The stillness of space was suddenly broken by a pulse, a signal faint yet unmistakable, reverberating through the deepest corners of the cosmos. It was not the first time Earth had received an odd transmission, but this one was different. Unlike the sporadic background radiation from distant stars or the random noise from long-dead civilizations, this message carried intention, precision, and clarity. For weeks, scientists from the United Earth Space Agency, (UESA), scrambled to decode its cryptic contents. Every department, from astrophysics to quantum mechanics, had been put on high alert as they realized the magnitude of the discovery. Dr. Ilara Kavanagh, a renowned xenolinguist, was the first to identify the patterns in the message, ancient symbols from a language long thought to be a myth. As she sat in the dimly lit lab of the UESA Command Center, her mind raced with possibilities. "This isn't just a signal," she muttered under her breath. "It's a map." The map led to a star system located on the edge of known space, a place where no human had ever ventured. The coordinates pointed directly to a dead star, surrounded by the remnants of a destroyed planet, a place shrouded in mystery. The message, with its final chilling words, offered little comfort. "The vault awaits. Only those worthy may enter." The moment the message was decrypted, the global political landscape shifted. Every nation, every faction, now had a stake in the mission to explore this forgotten corner of space. It wasn't just an opportunity to uncover a lost relic. It was an opportunity to unlock power that could alter the balance of the galaxy. A power that could shift the fate of Earth and its place among the stars. The UESA quickly formed a coalition, selecting a team of the best and brightest humanity had to offer. At the helm was Captain Ryan Ellis, a decorated military officer known for her unparalleled leadership skills and unwavering resolve. She had been at the forefront of Earth's last few interstellar missions, all of which had faced hostile alien forces. But this mission was different. It wasn't just about survival, it was about finding something that could reshape the universe itself. Ellis stood before the gathered team of scientists, engineers, and soldiers, all of them chosen for their expertise and resolve. The gravity of the mission weighed heavily on them, but no one spoke of the fears that loomed just beyond the veil of uncertainty. "We are the first human beings to stand at the threshold of the unknown," Captain Ellis began, her voice steady but carrying the weight of destiny. "Whatever we find in that star system, we must approach it with caution, but we cannot be afraid. We are not just explorers, we are the future of Earth." Her words were met with a quiet nod of agreement, but beneath the surface, every one of them wondered, what if we aren't the first to reach this vault? They had no way of knowing whether someone, or something, was already aware of this cosmic treasure. Earth was not alone in this vast universe, and there were other forces, far older and far more dangerous, who might also have set their eyes on this power. The Jar, an ancient, brutal race known for their hunger for control, had been a growing presence in the galaxy for years. If they had also deciphered the signal, the race to the vault would become a deadly contest. As the mission's launch day arrived, the crew gathered in the UESA Command Center, their faces lit by the glow of star maps and ship schematics. Tension crackled in the air, but so did anticipation. Earth had never embarked on a mission of this scale, and though they didn't yet know what lay ahead, one thing was certain: nothing could prepare them for the journey that was about to unfold. And with that, the fleet set course for the unknown, leaving behind a planet teeming with questions, hopes, and fears, all bound together by the ancient signal that would define humanity's future. The journey toward the dead star system began under the haunting silence of space. Captain Ryan Ellis stood on the bridge of the Elysium, the flagship of the mission, watching as the stars blurred into streaks of light through the viewport. Despite the crew's careful preparations and their advanced technology, a sense of unease lingered in the air. No one had ever ventured this far out into the void, and the unknown stretched ahead like an endless abyss. As the ship traveled deeper into uncharted territory, the Elysium encountered a series of anomalies that baffled even the most seasoned astrophysicists on board. Strange fluctuations in gravitational waves disrupted the ship's sensors, making navigation increasingly difficult. Lieutenant Commander Theo Zhang, the ship's lead engineer, had his hands full, constantly recalibrating systems to prevent the ship from veering off course. "Captain," Theo called out, his voice tense, "there's something strange happening with the gravitational fields ahead. It's not a standard anomaly, it feels deliberate, like someone or something set it in place." Ryan's brow furrowed. "Could be a defense mechanism. The vault isn't exactly meant to be found." The crew was on high alert, scanning for anything unusual as they neared the coordinates of the star system. But even as they moved closer, the signal pulsed intermittently, growing stronger with each passing day. Something, or someone, was waiting for them, but whether it was a friend or foe, they couldn't yet tell. One morning, the crew awoke to a new development. A massive, undetected asteroid belt had appeared directly in their path, its jagged rocks and debris swirling like an impenetrable wall. The crew scrambled to change course, but the Elysium's engines had already begun to slow. They were being pulled in by an unknown force, one that even their advanced thrusters couldn't escape. "We're stuck in a gravitational pull," said Ensign Kalira Singh, the ship's lead navigator, her voice tight with fear. "I don't understand it. This asteroid field, it wasn't here before. It's like it materialized out of nowhere." As the crew worked frantically to counter the pull, a sudden jolt rocked the ship, throwing everyone off balance. The emergency alarms blared, and the ship's lights flickered. Ryan's voice cut through the chaos. "Status report." Theo's face was ghostly pale as he spoke. "The engines are malfunctioning. The pull's too strong. We're drifting right into the center of the field." Captain Ellis' mind raced. Was this another test set by the vault's creators, or was something else out there waiting to destroy them? Suddenly, the ship's communication system crackled to life, sending a message across the open frequencies. The transmission was brief, and though its source was unclear, the words were unmistakable. "Turn back, Earth. The vault will be your tomb." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. The Jar. She'd been hoping it wasn't them, but the message was clear. Someone had been waiting for the Earth mission to arrive. The Jar had intercepted their signal, and they weren't going to let the humans reach the vault without a fight. With little time to waste, the Elysium's crew acted on pure instinct. Under Zhang's guidance, they managed to redirect the ship's thrusters just enough to break free of the asteroid field's pull. But the damage was done. The ship's systems were badly compromised, and the crew now had to contend with the knowledge that the Jar were no longer just a distant threat. They were out there hunting them. As they approached the coordinates of the vault's location, the team couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. A dark, oppressive presence seemed to lurk just beyond the edge of their perception. Whatever lay ahead, Ryan knew one thing for sure: the real challenge was only just beginning. The vault might be the key to humanity's future, but it could just as easily be the end of it. "We're close," Ryan murmured, staring out at the swirling nebula ahead. "Prepare for anything." The ship's engines powered down as they entered the star system, and the crew braced themselves for what they would find. Whatever this vault was, it was about to reveal its secrets, and they would have to face them head-on. The Elysium drifted slowly into the star system, its hull battered but intact. Ahead, the dead star loomed ominously, a cold remnant of a once vibrant celestial body, surrounded by the broken remains of a planet. The system's eerie silence seemed to press against the ship, like a thick fog that stifled every thought. But there was no time for hesitation. The vault was within reach, and the crew knew their mission was only half complete. Ray and Ellis stood at the helm, watching the readouts on the control panel. The ship's sensors were barely functioning, flickering sporadically as they attempted to scan the broken planet below. It was unlike anything they had seen before, a barren, lifeless world its surface scarred by cataclysmic events long past. Yet buried within its depths, the vault waited. "We've located an entrance," Kalira announced, her voice crackling through the comms. She was seated in the navigation bay, her fingers flying across the console. "There's a hidden structure beneath the planet's crust. The readings suggest it's built from materials unlike anything we've encountered." "We're not the first ones to find it," Ryan replied, her voice grim. "But we're the first to reach it." Theo Zhang had joined her on the bridge, his face ashen after a sleepless night spent trying to stabilize the ship. "I don't trust this place," he muttered, eyes scanning the data. "Too many anomalies. Too many things don't add up. The asteroid field, the energy signatures. We're walking into a trap." "Maybe," Ryan said. "But we can't turn back now. If this vault holds what I think it does, it could change everything. We have to find out what's inside." As the Elysium descended into the atmosphere of the broken planet, the ship began to shake, the tremors reverberating through its frame. The entry point was a massive opening at the planet's equator, an enormous, jagged crevice that seemed to draw the ship in like a magnet. They flew through it, the ship's hull groaning as it passed through a dense cloud of debris. The crew was silent as they neared the surface, their hearts heavy with anticipation and dread. Ahead, a towering structure loomed out of the shadows, a monolithic pyramid, half buried in the planet's rocky surface. It was ancient, impossibly so, its surfaces smooth despite the centuries of decay around it. The symbol of the vault, an intricate geometrical pattern, was etched into the stone at its base, glowing faintly with an inner light. Kalira's voice was barely a whisper over the comms. This can't be real. This structure, these markings, they're too advanced, even for the Jar." Ryan felt the weight of her words. The Jar were the most advanced species humanity had encountered, yet even they had never wielded technology of this kind. The vault wasn't just a repository of knowledge, it was a weapon, a key to power beyond comprehension. She knew they had to approach it with caution. "Set down near the entrance," Ryan ordered, her voice steady but resolute. "We go in together. No one stays behind." The Elysium landed with a soft thud on the fractured ground. The crew filed out of the ship, their suits glowing faintly in the dim light. The pyramid loomed ahead, its towering silhouette casting a long shadow across the planet's barren surface. The air was thick with tension, the silence almost oppressive. As Ryan led her team toward the entrance, a strange humming noise began to fill the air, low at first, but steadily growing in intensity. The ground beneath their feet vibrated as though something massive was awakening deep below. "Everyone stay alert," Ryan ordered, her hand gripping her weapon tightly. The entrance to the pyramid was a wide, arching doorway, its edges lined with the same glowing symbols they had seen on the map. As they stepped inside, the temperature dropped and a blinding light flashed from within, flooding the chamber with an unnatural radiance. It was then that they realized they weren't just entering a vault. They were stepping into a living structure, one that had been waiting for eons for someone worthy, or foolish, enough to come. And deep within the vault's core, something stirred. "This is only the beginning," Ryan muttered, a chill running down her spine. The vault was waking up, and so were the forces that protected it. The light from the vault's interior pulsated like the heartbeat of a dying star. The crew of the Elysium stood frozen at the threshold, their eyes wide with awe and trepidation. The air around them hummed with an unnatural energy, and the faintest whispering echoed through the chamber, as though the walls themselves were alive. Ryan Ellis was the first to break the silence. "We move in," she commanded, her voice firm but tinged with uncertainty. "Stay in formation. Watch your backs." The crew nodded, their boots scraping against the cold stone floor as they cautiously entered the chamber. The interior was vast, stretching far beyond what their initial scans had suggested. The walls were lined with strange alien markings, symbols that seemed to shift and change as they moved past them, defying logic and physics. Kalira, the ship's navigator, kept her eyes on her data pad, furiously scanning the chamber's architecture. "This place, it's enormous," she muttered, "and the energy readings are off the charts. I don't know how this thing is still standing." Theo Zhang, ever the skeptic, was more focused on the immediate threat. "This place feels wrong. It's like it's been waiting for us, or for something else." Ryan didn't have the time to indulge in paranoia. The vault had a singular purpose, and it was now hers to uncover. "Keep moving. We need to find the core." The crew made their way deeper into the structure, the walls narrowing until they entered a cavernous central chamber. At the heart of the room was an enormous pedestal, adorned with more shifting symbols. The pedestal's surface seemed to ripple, as though it were alive, an ethereal blue light flickering in its core. Ryan stepped forward, her breath catching in her throat. "This is it. This is the vault." The pedestal was more than just a repository of knowledge. It was a conduit, an amplifier of some kind. The symbols on its surface seemed to pulse in rhythm with her own heartbeat, beckoning her closer. With a determined hand, Ryan reached out to touch it. As soon as her fingers brushed the surface, a surge of energy shot through her body, knocking her back onto the cold stone floor. Her vision blurred, and she felt a wave of alien knowledge flood her mind. The symbols, the language, the history, it all crashed over her like a tidal wave, too much to comprehend in a single instant. For a moment, everything went black. When Ryan regained consciousness, she was surrounded by her team, who had rushed to her side. Kalira's voice was urgent. "Captain, are you okay? What happened?" Ryan blinked rapidly, trying to make sense of the overwhelming flood of information. Her head throbbed, and her thoughts seemed disjointed, but one thing was clear: she had unlocked something ancient and powerful. "It's a map," Ryan whispered, her voice distant. "A map to something much larger, something beyond this vault." Theo's expression hardened. "What do you mean, beyond?" Ryan's mind raced. The visions she had experienced weren't just of the vault itself, they were of other places, other worlds. She had glimpsed fragments of an ancient civilization, a race that had once ruled the galaxy, only to be wiped out in a cataclysmic event. The vault wasn't just a tomb of knowledge, it was a repository of their power, the key to unlocking unimaginable forces. But there was more. A hidden message had been embedded within the visions, a warning. The vault's power is not for mortals. Its guardians will rise to protect it. You have awakened them. Ryan stood up slowly, her body still weak from the surge of energy. "We need to leave. Now." The crew exchanged confused glances, but they didn't argue. The vault was not what they had expected, and the realization that they had unwittingly triggered its defenses was a chilling one. As they turned to leave, the chamber began to tremble. The ground beneath their feet shifted, and the walls vibrated violently. From the darkness ahead, a low growl echoed, a sound that was neither human nor alien, but something far older and more primal. Something that had been waiting for centuries, guarding the power of the vault. Ryan's heart pounded in her chest. The vault's guardians were waking up. "Get to the ship," she shouted. "Now." The crew sprinted toward the exit, their footsteps reverberating in the now unstable structure. The walls began to crack, the ceiling groaning under the strain of an invisible force. As they reached the chamber's exit, the ground beneath them erupted, and shadowy figures, tall, spectral beings of flickering energy, emerged from the walls, their forms shifting and twisting as though they were made of pure darkness. The Guardians had come. With no time to waste, Ryan and her team sprinted toward the Elysium, but the Guardians weren't far behind. Their energy crackled, warping the air around them, and one by one, they felt the presence of something far worse than they had ever anticipated. Ryan gritted her teeth. This was only the beginning. The light from the vault's interior pulsated like the heartbeat of a dying star. The crew of the Elysium stood frozen at the threshold, their eyes wide with awe and trepidation. The air around them hummed with an unnatural energy, and the faintest whispering echoed through the chamber, as though the walls themselves were alive. Ryan Ellis was the first to break the silence. "We move in," she commanded, her voice firm but tinged with uncertainty. "Stay in formation. Watch your backs." The crew nodded, their boots scraping against the cold stone floor as they cautiously entered the chamber. The interior was vast, stretching far beyond what their initial scans had suggested. The walls were lined with strange alien markings, symbols that seemed to shift and change as they moved past them, defying logic and physics. Kalira, the ship's navigator, kept her eyes on her data pad, furiously scanning the chamber's architecture. "This place, it's enormous," she muttered, "and the energy readings are off the charts. I don't know how this thing is still standing." Theo Zhang, ever the skeptic, was more focused on the immediate threat. "This place feels wrong. It's like it's been waiting for us, or for something else." Ryan didn't have the time to indulge in paranoia. The vault had a singular purpose, and it was now hers to uncover. "Keep moving. We need to find the core." The crew made their way deeper into the structure, the walls narrowing until they entered a cavernous central chamber. At the heart of the room was an enormous pedestal, adorned with more shifting symbols. The pedestal surface seemed to ripple as though it were alive, an ethereal blue light flickering in its core. Ryan stepped forward, her breath catching in her throat. "This is it. This is the vault." The pedestal was more than just a repository of knowledge. It was a conduit, an amplifier of some kind. The symbols on its surface seemed to pulse in rhythm with her own heartbeat, beckoning her closer. With a determined hand, Ryan reached out to touch it. As soon as her fingers brushed the surface, a surge of energy shot through her body, knocking her back onto the cold stone floor. Her vision blurred, and she felt a wave of alien knowledge flood her mind. The symbols, the language, the history, it all crashed over her like a tidal wave, too much to comprehend in a single instant. For a moment, everything went black. When Ryan regained consciousness, she was surrounded by her team, who had rushed to her side. Kalira's voice was urgent. "Captain, are you okay? What happened?" Ryan blinked rapidly, trying to make sense of the overwhelming flood of information. Her head throbbed, and her thoughts seemed disjointed, but one thing was clear: she had unlocked something ancient and powerful. "It's a map," Ryan whispered, her voice distant. "A map to something much larger, something beyond this vault." Theo's expression hardened. "What do you mean, beyond?" Ryan's mind raced. The visions she had experienced weren't just of the vault itself, they were of other places, other worlds. She had glimpsed fragments of an ancient civilization, a race that had once ruled the galaxy, only to be wiped out in a cataclysmic event. The vault wasn't just a tomb of knowledge. It was a repository of their power, the key to unlocking unimaginable forces. But there was more. A hidden message had been embedded within the visions, a warning. The vault's power is not for mortals. Its guardians will rise to protect it. You have awakened them. Ryan stood up slowly, her body still weak from the surge of energy. "We need to leave. Now." The crew exchanged confused glances, but they didn't argue. The vault was not what they had expected, and the realization that they had unwittingly triggered its defenses was a chilling one. As they turned to leave, the chamber began to tremble. The ground beneath their feet shifted, and the walls vibrated violently. From the darkness ahead, a low growl echoed, a sound that was neither human nor alien, but something far older and more primal. Something that had been waiting for centuries, guarding the power of the vault. Ryan's heart pounded in her chest. The vault's guardians were waking up. "Get to the ship," she shouted. "Now." The crew sprinted toward the exit, their footsteps reverberating in the now unstable structure. The walls began to crack, the ceiling groaning under the strain of an invisible force. As they reached the chamber's exit, The ground beneath them erupted, and shadowy figures, tall, spectral beings of flickering energy, emerged from the walls, their forms shifting and twisting as though they were made of pure darkness. The Guardians had come. With no time to waste, Ryan and her team sprinted toward the Elysium, but the Guardians weren't far behind. Their energy crackled, warping the air around them, and one by one, they felt the presence of something far worse than they had ever anticipated. Ryan gritted her teeth. This was only the beginning. The Elysium coasted through the dark expanse of space, its sleek form cutting through the void with an eerie stillness. The stars outside, once a comforting constant, now seemed distant, almost alien. Inside the ship, Ryan Ellis paced back and forth, the weight of what had just occurred settling heavily on her shoulders. The vault was behind them, collapsing into dust, but the Guardians, the power, and the knowledge they had unlocked, none of that could be outrun. Kalira worked furiously at her console, her eyes glued to the flickering screens in front of her. The ship's shields were at critical levels, the damage they'd sustained still evident in the system's readings. Her fingers danced across the controls, trying to repair what she could while the rest of the crew remained tense, too exhausted to speak, but not unaware of the weight of their predicament. "We're running on fumes," Kalira finally said, her voice tight. "The damage to the engines is severe. I can't make any promises we'll stay in one piece long enough to make it to the nearest station for repairs." Ryan nodded grimly. "We're not going back. Not now." She turned to Theo, who had been unusually quiet since their escape from the vault. "What do you make of it?" she asked. "What we uncovered down there, the vault's power, the Guardians, what are we dealing with?" Theo looked up from the data readouts he'd been studying, his face darkened by both confusion and awe. "I don't know," he admitted, shaking his head. "Whatever that vault contained, it's more than just a relic. It's a weapon, a source of unimaginable energy. But that's not all. There's something about those Guardians. They weren't just protecting it. They were bound to it. To us. It's like we weren't supposed to find it, or awaken them." Ryan frowned, her mind racing. "So what does that mean for us? We're now tied to this ancient force, and it's not going to let us go." Theo didn't answer immediately. The implications were too heavy, too dangerous. "It means we've just opened a door to something much bigger than we are. And if we don't understand it soon, we might not survive to see what comes next." Kalira, still focused on the console, spoke up again. "There's more." She gestured to the screen, where a star map was now projected. I ran scans of the surrounding systems. The energy signature we triggered from the vault, it wasn't just localized to that planet. It's spreading, very slowly but steadily. It's like a beacon, drawing attention. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. "From who?" "I don't know," Kalira replied, her voice filled with uncertainty. "But this much energy, it's impossible for anyone not to notice. The Guardians were likely just the beginning. Whatever else is out there, we've just made ourselves targets." Silence fell over the crew. The enormity of their discovery, of their mistake, was becoming clear. They had been chosen to uncover the vault's secrets, but they hadn't been prepared for the consequences. The universe had its own rules, and those who dared to challenge them were never left unscathed. Theo turned back to Ryan, his face tight with resolve. "We have to find out who built the vault, what it's for, and most importantly, how to control it. Because if we don't, we'll be at the mercy of whatever or whoever is coming for it." Ryan met his gaze, feeling the weight of his words. They were on the edge of something vast, something far beyond their understanding, and there was no turning back now. They had awakened an ancient force, and the universe would soon be knocking at their door, demanding answers. "We don't have time to waste," Ryan said, her voice hardening with determination. "We keep moving forward. Find the next lead, the next piece of the puzzle. The Elysium is our only chance, and I'm not about to let it fall apart now." She turned to Kalira. "Can you patch the engines? At least enough to get us to the nearest station?" Kalira's fingers flew across the console. I'll give it everything I've got, but I'll need some time. We have time, Ryan said, but her voice held an edge of urgency, but not as much as we think. Whatever's out there, it's coming, and we need to be ready. With a deep breath, Ryan settled into the command chair, her mind running through 1,000 scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. The vault was just the beginning, and the knowledge they had unlocked had set off a chain of events that no one, not even the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, could predict. She glanced at the star map on the screen, watching as the energy pulse from the vault continued to spread, slowly encroaching upon the surrounding systems. The universe was waking up, the storm was coming, and humanity was right in the middle of it. "Let's get to work," she said quietly. "This is just the start." The Elysium lurched forward with a sudden jolt as Kalira pushed the ship's engines beyond their limits. Sparks flew from the control panels, and the ship's frame groaned in protest, but it held together, for now. Ryan sat silently in the command chair, her gaze fixed on the star map. The energy pulse from the vault was still radiating outward, expanding slowly but steadily. Each minute that passed seemed to drag them deeper into a cosmic web they couldn't escape. Whatever had been hidden in that vault, whatever power they had unwittingly released, it was already pulling them into its orbit. "How long until we reach the station?" Ryan asked, breaking the oppressive silence. Kalira glanced at the diagnostics, biting her lip. "At this rate, we'll make it in about 12 hours, if the engines hold." Theo, still standing at the navigation console, adjusted the course with quick, precise movements. His face was drawn, a mix of exhaustion and anxiety clouding his features. "We'll need repairs before we can continue. If the Guardians were just the first wave of protection, we could face something much worse next time." Ryan nodded, the reality of their situation sinking in. They were too far from home, too far from any real help. The nearest station might give them a moment to breathe, but it wouldn't be enough, not with the forces they had unleashed. "Do we have any intel on who, or what, might be coming after us?" Ryan pressed, her voice steady but filled with urgency. Theo shook his head. "No, whatever technology is behind the vault, it's not like anything we've encountered before. The Guardians seem tied to it, almost sentient. We barely made it out of there alive." Kalira added, her voice quieter. "There's something else. I've been running scans on the Galactic communication networks. It's a long shot, but I think we might have just activated something on a much larger scale. Systems far beyond our sector are lighting up with strange signals. The pulse we triggered might have reached them already." Ryan felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up. The thought that they had alerted forces far beyond their comprehension was terrifying. But what could they do? They were already in motion, too deep in the dark to turn back. "What are the signals?" she asked. Kalira's fingers flew over the console, pulling up a series of encrypted transmissions. "Encrypted, but I can see that it's not just one isolated system. Several distant regions are reacting. Some seem to be military outposts, others research stations. But one of them," she paused, her voice tinged with disbelief. "One of them is directly linked to the hegemony of Eternus." Ryan's blood ran cold. The hegemony of Eternus was a name that sent a shiver down the spine of anyone in the galaxy. A militaristic empire, rumored to control vast swaths of space, with technology so advanced it bordered on the mythical. Their military might had never been challenged. If they were paying attention to the pulse from the vault, it was no longer just a race to understand what they had uncovered. It was a race to survive. "The Eternus?" Theo whispered, his voice barely audible. "How the hell did they find out?" "That's what I'm going to find out," Kalira replied, her fingers moving even faster over the controls. "We can't afford to just sit here. We need to know what they're after and why they're reacting to the pulse." Ryan stood, her mind racing. The hegemony of Eternus had never shown interest in the uncharted regions of the galaxy before. Their reach had always been contained, but now their attention had shifted, and it was focused squarely on them. "We can't take them on directly," Ryan said. "We're outgunned and outmanned. But if they're following the energy pulse, they might have more intel on the vault's secrets than we do. We need to stay ahead of them." Kalira looked up. "I've got an idea, but it's risky. There's a system near the station, a former research hub for the Eternus. If we can slip past their defenses, we might be able to intercept their communications and get a clearer picture of their next move." Theo didn't hesitate. "It's a long shot, but it's our best chance." Ryan nodded. "Then it's settled. Prepare for evasive maneuvers, Kalira. We're going to need all the speed and stealth we can get." The tension in the air thickened as the Elysium entered the darkened void between the stars, the crew's focus shifting to the plan ahead. The pulse from the vault continued to expand, and the unknown forces it had drawn toward them seemed to multiply by the second. The hegemony of Eternus was just the beginning. There were larger, darker forces at play, and the crew of the Elysium would have to navigate through it all, learning to survive in a galaxy that no longer welcomed them. And somewhere out there, the Vault's guardians still watched. The game was far from over. The Elysium darted through the shadowed expanse, its once pristine hull now scared by battle and the relentless pursuit of forces far beyond their understanding. The crew, exhausted but determined, gathered around the central command table, the star map projected before them. Their time was running out. Kalira's fingers hovered over the controls, her expression a mix of concentration and fear. "We've reached the perimeter of the Eternus-controlled system," she said, her voice low. "I can barely make out their military presence, but the detection grids are in place. If we're going to make it through undetected, it has to be now." Ryan stood at the head of the table, her arms crossed, eyes narrowing as she scanned the projections. "No mistakes. If we're caught, it's over. This is our one shot." The tension in the room was palpable. They had come so far, faced unimaginable odds, and now, at the precipice of the unknown, they were about to risk everything to learn the truth about the Vault and the forces hunting them. But what would they do once they uncovered that truth? Could they stop what they had started? Could anyone? "Ready when you are, Captain," Theo said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. He was a soldier at heart, but even he knew that what they were about to face was unlike anything they had encountered. Ryan nodded, taking one final look at her crew. "Let's make history." Kalira initiated the sequence. The Elysium's engines roared to life, and the ship slid into the dark fold of the Eternus system's outer rim. As the ship traveled deeper, they passed the outer defense satellites, the detection fields, and the layers of shields that surrounded the hub. It was a close call, but they made it through, entering the silent, ominous void of the central station. For a moment, it felt like they had won. Then the comm system crackled to life, and a voice, calm, clipped, and unmistakably authoritative, came through. "Unidentified vessel, you're trespassing in Eternus space. Prepare to be boarded." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. They had been found. Kalira's hands flew over the console as she cut off the communication. "They've activated their full fleet. I'm getting multiple signatures moving toward us. We don't have long." "We can't fight them head-on," Theo said, his voice sharp with urgency. "We need to get to the station fast." Ryan turned to Kalira. "Can you bring us into the heart of their command center? I need to access their intel." "I can try," Kalira said, her fingers dancing over the console. "But they'll be expecting us. It's going to be tricky." "Then let's make it count," Ryan replied, steeling herself for the storm to come. The Elysium surged forward, narrowly avoiding fire from Eternus patrol ships. Ryan's pulse raced as she gripped the armrest of her chair, watching the ships draw closer. Kalira was working at lightning speed, pushing the ship's systems beyond their limits, weaving through space like a shadow. The Eternus fleet closed in, their weapons charging. The Elysium jolted as a blast skimmed past them, the ship's shields flickering dangerously. "We need to make it to the control tower," Kalira said. "Once I'm inside their system, we'll be able to access everything. Their secrets, their plans, everything." Ryan's mind raced as she strategized. The Guardians from the vault had not only been a weapon, they were an ancient defense system, and the universe was waking up to their power. The Eternists were one part of that puzzle, but who else was out there? The Elysium plunged into the depths of the station's orbital ring, its sleek form now skimming the surface of the station itself. Ahead, the massive Eternus command tower loomed, guarded by an impenetrable array of energy shields and automated defenses. But they had no choice. This was their last hope. "We're almost there," Kalira said, sweat beading on her brow as the ship's controls fought against her. The Eternus fleet was on their tail, and their weapons were becoming more accurate by the second. With a sharp intake of breath, Ryan gave the order, "Punch through the shields, full power." Kalira's hands slammed down on the command console, and the Elysium shot forward, colliding with the barrier of the station's energy shield. The ship groaned, the hull trembling, but the shields shattered. The Elysium streaked through the chaos, a brief but brilliant flash of light in the dark. Inside the command tower, Kalira's console beeped wildly as the ship's systems interfaced with the Eternus network. A flood of encrypted data appeared on the screen, and Kalira quickly began decrypting it. She breathed heavily, her eyes wide with revelation. "We've got it," she said, her voice full of awe. The Eternus weren't just protecting the vault's power. They were trying to control it. And it's not just them. It's a weapon that can reshape the very fabric of reality itself. Ryan turned to the others. "We can't let them have it." In that moment, everything changed. They had awoken the universe's hidden power, and now they were the only ones who could stop it from falling into the wrong hands. The Elysium shuddered as the Eternus forces descended upon them, but Rayan Ellis and her crew weren't about to back down. The storm had arrived, and they were ready to face it head-on. The vault's power had been unleashed. The universe would never be the same again.